Yep.
All right, so we'll start. Good morning, everyone, or evening, or wherever you are from. Warm Pacific greetings. Thank you again for joining SPTO webinar. Today we have two fantastic guests with us. We got Paul Ralston and Shawn Scott. Paul is the co-founder for Aiguides, and they do a lot of promotion through storytelling. And I think it's quite relevant to the Pacific as well, because we, apart from our unique beach and our tourism products and things like that, I think what makes us Pacific people unique is our people and our culture. And and I think storytelling is, I think, the more stories we tell about the Pacific, I think the more people will know how beautiful the Pacific is, not only as a country, as the region, but as people and culture as well. So, so thank you for Paul for being interested in doing this webinar with us, and also thank you for linking Shawn Scott with us. And Shawn has been in the photography industry for a long time, and he's also the brand ambassador for Tourism Australia as well. So Shawn will be sharing his experience and insights about photography and storytelling as well. So first we'll have the presentation by Paul, and then Shawn. And then if you have any questions, please just send us the message, and we'll take it in. And then towards the end of the presentations, we'll start asking questions, whoever questions you have for either Shawn or Paul. So Paul, I'll pass it over to you, mate.
Okay, thank you. Share my screen. It's working?
Yes, it's working, Paul. Thank you.
There's Shawn in the wild. Yeah, so thanks to SPTO, the whole team at SPTO, first off, for inviting me along to talk about content marketing, but really how storytelling in content is becoming really powerful, and how to work with people like Shawn to really amplify that message. So like Jamshi said, I'm co-founder of Aiguides. So we're a platform where people can book trips created by the world's best storytellers. So in partnership with high-profile photographers, filmmakers and chefs, we create bookable trip packages. We're currently operating in New Zealand and Australia, and we're about to expand into the South Pacific Islands. As soon as the restrictions allow that to happen. So, look, I just wanted to first acknowledge, for everyone in tourism, 2020 has definitely been a year we would all prefer to just move on from. But I think in particular, our region we've had a really tough year. We had the bushfires in Australia, and we had White Island volcano. We had the devastating cyclone that went through much of the Pacific Islands, and we barely had a chance to come up for air. And then we had this global pandemic we had to deal with, which essentially made our industry illegal. And I saw something, so because we're the island nation, we've been able to deal with the health side of it really well. We're definitely, in a harder spot compared to markets like the US and the EU are starting to open up at least their domestic tourism, but we're still left in a place where we're not sure what's going on. So, it's definitely been a tough time for us. But I think the reason what we've done now is, I'm sure everyone has been trying to read the tea leaves and trying to build strategies around what's going to happen, what the government's doing, when the borders are going to open. But what we've done now is to focus on things that we can control and working to our advantage. So more specifically, our marketing strategy. So what we do know is that tourism is definitely going to recover, and it's obviously going to recover in a big way. And we're already seeing data in markets like Airbnb put out some great data from the US. We've seen EU open for their summer holidays and parts of Asia. And we know that the profile of that traveler coming out of COVID is one that's really looking for family friendly. They're looking for eco. They're looking for not so crowded destinations. Like a cleaner feel to their destinations, and that naturally just leads straight into a huge opportunity for, I think, for in particular the South Pacific Island nations. That's already the brand of those of all those destinations. It's already seen in, for people in Australia, we look to all of those locations and think, I'd love to take my family there. It's safe. It's really warm and welcoming. There's beautiful beaches. So I'm looking at it now as a huge opportunity to work, so that with that being the target markets, really using marketing strategy to try and attract that traveller. So I pulled out some numbers. Just this is just Australian outbound travellers from 2019. So, I mean, everyone, Australians and Kiwis, we love to travel, and in particular we love to travel overseas. So you can see the equivalent of half the population of Australia went overseas last year. It was a huge number. And apart from New Zealand, which oil reports New Zealand, their market will go up. But apart from that, it's really destinations that are probably going to be less desirable, especially for families and people looking, that post-COVID traveller. They're probably going to be less desirable countries, whereas the Pacific Islands is in a position to, well, I want to say steal those travellers, but attract the traveller that was probably thinking Indonesia or Thailand or somewhere close like that. There's a massive opportunity to position the destinations or your experiences to take advantage of that. Yeah, look, so the biggest opportunity for me is, so content marketing. What we do know is that it's going to be highly competitive. Bali and places like that are going to be desperate to get travellers back, Thailand. So it's going to be an incredibly competitive landscape. And how can content marketing help sort of cut through that noise and attract a new customer? So I love this definition. Content marketing is a marketing program that centers on creating, publishing, and distributing content for your target audience, the goal of which is to attract new customers. So it's really thinking about who is the target customer and how are we going to deliver content to them to, well, attract them to our destination. So this is, look, if anyone wants to reach out, there's some great research on this. It's done by HubSpot, and Amazon or AWS are big champions of thinking about the old type of marketing funnel where it's we inspire and we deliver content at the top and we try and drive sales or bookings out the bottom. What HubSpot really champions is that your content, or for me, this is all about building a community. So it's all about delivering content to attract, engage, and delight your customers. And it's a flywheel that continues to go around and grow as time goes on. So I love to think about our content marketing in that way, and I think it's really relevant for tourism because it's all about constantly delivering content to your customers. So now these days, and as Jamshir said, the consumers these days across all brands, even big brands like Nike, you can see the way they're changing to. Consumers are looking for the story behind the brand, or that's what they're more and more looking for. And really, I think that's incredibly relevant for tourism. You can see people are looking for, they want to connect with the story behind the destination. So they want to hear the story of the locals, the people there. They want to hear the story of the iconic spots. So if you're a tourism board, they're wanting to hear the stories from the culture of the islands and feel connected to that before they go. And if you're an experience, they want to hear that, they feel the stories of the people that are gonna take them there. So I think I always try and think about this when I'm thinking about content marketing. It's less so, although beautiful images are a big part of it, it's also, it goes hand in hand with telling a beautiful story to connect with customers. So, look, I'll bring up an example of it still goes down in Australia as the biggest storytelling, I guess. It was done not for tourism, but it goes down as having the biggest impact on tourism in Australia of any campaign. So it was done for $7 million, a budget of $7 million at the time. It, like I said, had nothing to do with tourism, and its impact on tourism in Australia is measured in the billions of dollars. So I'm sure everyone's seen the movie, and that was the Crocodile Dundee movie. It still goes down as, you know, it's especially the US audience, but I guess when you cut through the fact that it was a movie, what it did was tell a story of Australia that resonated with audiences around the world. So it had a character that people connected with, and it told stories of Australia as this far outback land that's easygoing people. And to the point where, I don't know if anyone's seen the campaign, Tourism Australia just did a $36 million campaign at the Super Bowl in the US. And this time they used Chris Hemsworth as, I think, a bit more relevant to today's market. So Chris Hemsworth is now, obviously, Tourism Australia look to him as someone that he's obviously going to attract the right type of traveller to Australia. And the reason I bring this up is because I've like very relevant to the Pacific Islands is, well, Jamchi actually mentioned I hadn't thought about the Blue Lagoon movie back in the 80s, which is also Fiji, but this is something that's on right now. So when we, this would be a great tool to leverage because it's going to 200 countries and territories around the world, huge US and European audiences. And if you look up the key themes of this show, it's eco, it's showing beaches. Probably when people are thinking Pacific Islands, they're thinking, wow, beautiful beaches. But this show is going to highlight rainforests and waterfalls, you know, soft adventure travelers, these themes. It would be a great opportunity to leverage this show into your own marketing. So look, well, we certainly don't have $36 million to spend on a Super Bowl ad, and I'm sure most people don't. So I just wanted to mention that, but really it's about whether you're a tourism board or an experience, it's about using the tools that are available to us to do our content marketing. And over and above, social media is by far the easiest or the best tool available to us, with Instagram being at the top. And you know, that it's still the best tool to reach existing customers and new customers and build a community around these tools. So this is some great research that I saw. It's done by Skift just at the start of this year, and they surveyed 400 of the biggest marketing agencies in tourism from around the world. And I think when you think marketing, a lot of people like Facebook and Google will always talk about eyes on brand. So getting your images to as many people as possible. Whereas in tourism, it's definitely more about engaging with an audience, connecting with your community, rather than talking to them, you're talking with them. So increasing the intent to visit, you can see is just, I think we'd all rather have 10 people on an image comment, you know, oh my God, we have to go here for our next holiday, rather than getting 1,000 likes. So again, when you're thinking storytelling through your content, I always think it's great to have this in mind. And again, this is there's some great research on this. So if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share this after. So here's a smaller campaign that I thought I'd just mention just to show you how powerful this can be. So if anyone knows the Faroe Islands is a small collection of islands just off Denmark, and they did a very small budget campaign. But what they did was they did it in a brilliant storytelling. So they used just a local person to tell the stories of the islands, and they used YouTube as the platform. and you can look this up. It's really, really well done. And it ended up reaching 3.5 billion people around the world. So that just shows you the power of storytelling in content. So this is, yeah, I think that's for me one of the best I've seen. So I guess I just wanted to finish by saying, so what the best way to think about content marketing, and this would be my biggest advice, is content marketing is just an extension of your existing marketing strategy. So we always have people come to us when they're looking for advice on, they want to work with influencers or storytellers like Shawn. And everyone has, I guess, they've got a story where it didn't go wrong. And I think the starting point for when you're looking to work with someone like Shawn is to think about your own marketing strategy that you've got. So who are your target customer? Who are you looking at? So if you're looking at targeting an Australian customer, family, eco, you don't want to get, just because someone's got 8 million followers, they might not necessarily be the right fit for partnering with on this campaign. So definitely thinking about everything that, when you're talking about storytelling and content marketing, thinking about it as an extension of your existing marketing strategy. So it's not just about getting as many likes as you can on your photos, and it's more thinking about it as your strategy around building a community, and I think that's the most important. Lastly, I've stolen this off Jamshir mentioned this the other day, but I think this is the last piece that sometimes is overlooked, and that's making sure that the expectation of so if you're marketing to a customer segment that is a family-friendly customer looking for an eco-style holiday, and that's what you're building a community on, just making sure that the experience, whether you're an experience or, a tourism board or your accommodation, just making sure that that's matching up for that. Because over and above, we all know that in tourism, the word of mouth has always been and will always be the best form of marketing. Having people coming home and saying this was the best, you must go there, this was incredible, will always be the best. And I think this is just the last point that I just wanted to touch on. So I just did a bit of research in preparation, and I thought about some people that could potentially provide value to. In this webinar, we've obviously got a mix of people listening in. So I tried to think about some great storytellers that could work in different customer segments. So I thought if you're trying to target an Australian customer, let's say, and you wanted to target someone who's food and wine, luxury, also likes doing local cuisine, Lance SPTO would be a great option for something like that. So potentially you've got a large accommodation with some great restaurants. Someone like Lance, he's got a lot of media in Australia. He's a very trusted person. He's known as like getting into the food scene, I guess, in the Pacific Islands anyway. So that would be a great fit. Melissa, we work with a bit. So her brand is really, if you're looking at targeting probably couples, looking for really eco, wellness, soft adventure. Melissa is also very well known for getting into the culture of destinations. So like Jamshir said before, like if you're looking at highlighting the culture of an island, Melissa would be a great fit there. And another two that we definitely work with is, so Mark Fitz. So he is definitely, his brand is well known for diving with whale sharks. He's got his family with him a bit. He works with a lot of luxury resorts through the Great Barrier Reef. So Mark is another really, really trusted storyteller who's grown quite a nice community over the years. And Shawn, we've obviously got with now, so I won't go over too much, but Shawn Yeah, well, I'll interview him in a second. But Shawn's brand is really, I guess, Shawn, he's got a pretty wide-reaching community. His community is one of the most trusted that we've seen in all our research. So definitely landscapes, definitely underwater photography, but also diving into the culture and the stories of the what makes destinations special. I think Shawn's community is one of the most trusted we've seen. So without further ado, we're lucky enough to actually have Shawn with us today. So I'll just introduce Shawn. So Shawn, as he mentioned, for those listening in at the start, so Shawn, yeah, I'll call me biased, but I think Shawn is one of the world's best photographers, but he's definitely one of the most recognised photographers in Australia. Been doing it for, well, I think around 20 years now. I think 6 laps of Australia or something like crazy like that. So he's a Tourism Australia ambassador, or Friend of Australia, as we call it, along with Chris Hemsworth. He's an ambassador for Canon and Toyota. He's worked with tourism boards throughout Australia, tourism boards internationally, throughout the Pacific Islands as well as working with operators, experiences, gig OTAs, things like that. So I thought this would be a great opportunity. I'll ask Shawn a few questions, and then, yeah, we've got some time for questions at the end, where if anyone wants to dive in and ask Shawn some questions. So, look, so Shawn, we'll start off, you're obviously trapped in Australia at the moment, but yeah, do you want to just start off by where are you at the moment, and yeah, where do you base yourself, I guess, these days?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, it's great to be on here. So hello, everybody. I'm actually based in Queensland, which is the northern part of Australia. And fortunately, we've sort of negotiated this COVID-19 quite well. So we're allowed to travel at the moment. So I've recently just got back from, I think it was an 8 or 9 week road trip all throughout Queensland, doing, Great Barrier Reef work, some outback work and everything in between. I'm a photographer. I've got a gallery based at Burleigh Heads, which is just on the border of Queensland and New South Wales. I've been a photographer for 20 years. So my aim originally was to take photographs and, sell prints, things that I like to photograph. And that's how I started my career. With that, I found I was traveling to beautiful locations to get beautiful photographs, and then sort of just realized that the story of getting there was just as important as the image at the end. So I started to share that story through social media, and I was back into it in the early days, and I got a great following and people really engaged, and I've continued to do that ever since.
Okay. And so I think, one, we sort of mentioned it at the start, but I think one thing that goes a little unnoticed with photographers especially is just how hardworking photographers are. So I saw a great statistic the other day which said for every 1 day behind the camera, professional photographers will spend 3 days sitting at a computer on average. So you are obviously someone who goes out on multiple week shoots. So how do you manage you've got the images shooting, which you've got to manage, then you've got to edit the photos, and you've also got to manage your community and your clients. So just a little bit of insight into a day in the life of Shawn when you're out on a shoot, I guess.
It's definitely a challenge. I've always thought to myself, if I ever wanted to employ somebody, I'd want to employ a storyteller, because we go out there and I basically would work 12, 16 hours a day when I'm out on jobs, and purely because we love it, and I've got a young videographer who has just started working with me now full time, and just got back from this last trip, and he was videoing, he was editing at night time, he was loading social media while we were driving, and I was really impressed just to see that he had that same passion as I had. So yes, they're big days and we work a lot through it. We'll get up an hour before sunrise, shoot that early morning light, shoot the sunrise, then we will drive hundreds of kilometers during the day, and he'll be on the phone doing all the social media while we're driving. Then we'll find locations to shoot set, and then after dark we'll be out again looking for stars. And yeah, because it's your passion, it is quite easy. After 8 weeks, we started to get a little bit tired at the end of that. But yeah, when it's your passion, you definitely put a lot of work in. There's a lot of research goes on, and we, as a team now, I've got the girls that work in my gallery as well. So they're quite often behind the scenes, sort of flicking through some information for me and trying to find some places I should visit. I feel very lucky that my audience is also quite engaged. So it's great. No matter sort of where I am, I always seem to be able to find these people that will reach out to me and give me ideas of places to see. You know, I remember once I was in Canada doing through Alaska and come across the border crossing there, and the border officer said, "We've got Shawn Scott here." I was thinking, it's a really tiny little town. I was like, "What's going on here?" And then this lady comes out, she goes, "Oh, I saw you traveling through. Just really wanted to meet you." I was thinking, wow, this is so remote, such a remote location. But it just showed that my audience was following what I was doing, and they liked that sort of area. So it must have reached this person, which is pretty cool. But they end up, you know, talking to me a lot, and they forgot to stamp my passport out of the States. So I actually had problems then trying to get my passport sorted out. But yeah, so sorry, I've just sort of gone on a bit of a tangent there, but just it shows, you know, how that reach and how working with your audience and that can really help you.
And that's actually a great segue into, so one thing that I thought would be, we've obviously in the webinar, we've got an array of, so tourism boards, maybe travel agents, operators, but I think there's great examples of even where in tourism, where a cafe, it doesn't matter what you're promoting on social media, but it all comes down to building a community. And I think that's something that's anybody can think about, no matter which part of tourism you're in. So maybe, I guess, Shawn, you've obviously got quite a significant community, but it's incredibly trusting community. And if you had any advice, for just some general advice for everyone in the webinar around that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important, if you are using storytellers, to find the storyteller that's telling the story that you want. You know, some people will try to just any work or any jobs, where, you know, it's always been my approach, especially from the start, because I was photographing for my gallery. I was going to locations I really wanted to go to and really believed in. So that's where my sides really helped me with my following, because they want to see what I want to see. So I've built that up. So, you know, then that could be either, you know, swimming in the ocean or surfing or climbing mountains. You just got to find that right storyteller to tell that story that you want to have shared. Some people do more, you know, the food and the cultural side of things. But yeah, it's just a matter of really searching. Yeah, and it's an area that is growing. You know, I'm getting more and more work at the moment. Even this last trip through Queensland, I was quite surprised. Everywhere in the north of Queensland was flat out, like all the tourism operators, they couldn't get staff anymore because Queenslanders have started to travel, and we're allowed to travel, so we're going. So once we can start flying overseas and having the name like the South Pacific Islanders have had, with very little problems with the virus, I can imagine the outflow of Australians going to this location will be incredible for you guys as well. I was just blown away just by how busy all Queensland was up the north. I couldn't get, you know, tour guides to come and turn up for photo shoots because I was so busy with too many guests and whatnot. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting time. I think it's a very positive time. And like Paul was saying, I like the idea because, you know, I love the South Pacific Islands. I've been through to Fiji, to Tonga, I've been to the Cook Islands, and I like that focus. And if Australia can start leaning that way and, you know, really promoting it and having Australians go there, I think there's such great value there. And it's something I believe in as well, because like I said, I love the area. So that's where, yeah, finding the right people who want to share those stories is very important.
Yeah, and I think that's you probably just made a lot of people very happy hearing those stories from Queensland. I think sometimes the media at the moment's not shining a pretty light on tourism, but when you hear stories from the ground like that, I think it's great to hear. And I think for me, the takeaway for that is, you wouldn't send, if I was destination New York, you know, I wouldn't be a great fit to get Shawn. Like, you can hear Shawn's passion for Australia and the Pacific Islands and regions like that. And that is where it resonates with his community. So it's a natural fit. So that's why I wanted to get him on today to chat to everyone. So the other one I definitely wanted to talk about was just when we're talking storytelling, I think I love hearing photographers talking about the story behind images. So Shawn, you're great at, you mentioned when we were chatting yesterday about the silo in Queensland, and some of your images, they have a story of their own almost. And look, I think it's just worth, again, everyone, no matter if you're an amateur photographer or someone of your profile, like people are looking for the story behind the images. So if you just wanted to talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, being in the right place at the right time for me is always the key to creating this content. And, you know, having partners that can help me get into the right place at the right time enables me, you know, every so often you get this 1 or 2 images that might just really stand out. And some of these will get a life of their own. They'll be shared. Like the one that Paul was just mentioning was just it's a silo out in outback Queensland, and it's a big grain silo. It's huge. It's got a beautiful big mural painted on it. And I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning to photograph this silo with the Milky Way all over it. And the image ended up on my Facebook page being seen by, I think, 800,000 people. It was shared something like 10,000 times. So the amount of people that have seen that and the amount of people that are now coming to me wanting to know how to get there and that are going there. And it's just, that's my real goal when I get out there, try to find images that are going to have a life of their own. Once they go out there onto the web, you'll see it. If you look through my tags on my Instagram, you'll see some images get tagged, you know, 300 or 400 times where people have reshared this image. So I think that's one part of the photography side of what I do, which is what I'm always trying to do. You can't guarantee that you're going to have an image that goes that viral, but having a storyteller with the potential to create things like that, I think isn't just an extra bonus.
Yeah, and that's, I believe it's something that's not quite, it's very difficult to track. So I don't think we talk about it a lot, but the virality of, or the lifespan of an image is something that's incredibly powerful in tourism. So if you watch a lot of different accounts, Shawn has obviously got partners like Canon and these partners that reshare his images as well. And they obviously have significant, but also just a lot of other tourism accounts, and like Shawn's images have this ability to almost have their own lifespan in social media. And I saw Shawn the other day, even one of the biggest accounts on Twitter reposted if anyone here's seen, there's a really famous photo that Shawn took of 2 sharks, or is it 3 sharks in a wave?
There's 3 sharks in the wave, yep.
All together. And this image is something that, how many years ago would you have taken that one? That's
about 3 years ago, I think, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and you can see, I think just last week, one of the biggest accounts on Twitter reposted this image and said, this is in Perth, Western Australia. And you can just see that it's something that it's got its own life, and it always keeps the destination top of mind. So, yeah, I mean,
it's just a matter of, trying to, you know, get the people in the right spot for those sorts of things to potentially happen. And if you have the good photographer, videographer, they will know what they're looking for, and they will aim for that. I had one instance when I was in Tasmania once. I had this little baby wombat, and I was videoing it with my phone. The little wombat just chased me along the beach and tried to nestle up in amongst my feet, and I put it up there, and that thing once again went viral. Tasmania, it ended up being on CNN. Tasmania ran a wombat cuddling competition worldwide, and if you now ever Google Derek the Wombat, you'll see pages and pages of pages all over the world just about this little wombat. But that's just another example of just little things that you can pop up every now and again. If you get the right person that creates it and captures it, it can really take off.
Yeah. So yeah, we saw, I used I wanted to use a little example in the presentation about video. And so you've obviously been doing it for 20 years. You would have seen it go from film to digital, and now obviously there's this big wave of, I guess, the emergence of video, but I think really in tourism it's short form video, so clips that are even really shorter clips, 10, 20 seconds long, up to a minute long, potentially a bit longer for YouTube. So yeah, did you want to just, from your point of view, what you're seeing? I mean, you mentioned you've got a videographer with you now, just you know, the impact that you think short form video is having on tourism.
Yeah, I think I've noticed that over the last 2 or 3 years, all my clients have really been asking for more video content. It's another skill. Like I can video certain things, and I have video that sharks that Paul was mentioning. I had a video of that also went quite crazy. But yeah, well, they say a photo says 1,000 words, and I think they say a video says 10,000 words or something. But so yeah, by having a videographer with me now, half the journey for me, especially when I'm doing these huge road trips, it's being out there. Like I did one last year straight through the centre of Australia from one side to the other. It was Australia's longest shortcut. So I think it was 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres of dirt road, and we're camping out in swags and on the roof of my car. And so I thought the challenge to get out there was a big thing. So just by bringing an extra videographer along with me, that was just that last little bit, but we were able to create so much more from that. So I think in my case now, I have his name's Mark, so he's working with me full time now. So we go out there and he's with me all the time. So no matter where I get to, he's there. So he learns from my skill of learning how to see things, and he captures the video version as I photograph it. We can use each other sometimes as talent within the images or videos. So yeah, it's definitely something that's really taken off, and it's just as important as photography, I think.
Yep. And just on that, I heard a great quote the other day, which I thought I'd share. It's one of our Kyle Munda, or Bear Key, if anyone follows him, he's a GoPro ambassador that we work with from New Zealand. And he's obviously does the filmmaking a lot more. And he had a great quote, which is, your normal is somebody's extraordinary. So I guess it's really, I'm sure everyone that lives in the South Pacific Islands probably looks at the beaches and thinks, that's just, you've grown up with that, and that's your everyday. But for people who live in the middle of Australia, or for people that don't live, for them that's incredible. So short form video has this beautiful way of connecting with audiences that just your everyday. So if you're an experience where you do scenic flights or something like that in the Pacific Islands, short form video has a beautiful way of connecting with a new community, because for you, your everyday is incredible for someone else. So just thinking about that, I thought that was a great quote. Oh yeah, so this is, I hadn't told Shawn this when we first reached out to Shawn, but Shawn is one of the best at promoting responsible tourism in his brands. So protecting the environment and Indigenous cultures and things like the real pillars of responsible tourism, what it means to look after countries like Australia and the Pacific Islands, and making sure that they do exist for generations to come, and making sure that tourism has a positive impact on these places. So do you, Shawn, think that it's becoming another thing that's becoming more of a focus with your community and with tourism boards and things like that? Are you seeing that as a trend?
Yeah, it's definitely, I've done a lot of work throughout Outback Australia with a lot of the Indigenous communities, and it's also, once again, it's because I love it, to get out there to see the culture. The locals want to show you their culture. So if you show a bit of respect and you can get out there and show interest, you get shown around to some of the most beautiful locations, and it just puts another level there. It's one thing just to see the pretty photos and whatnot, but to be accepted and, feel part of the community and get to experience what they love about the place you're visiting, it's just another level. And I found a lot of my community are really interested in that. So yes, I've really enjoyed it myself. Plus it's, it's great for the country. It's great for the communities, and it's something that I continue to try and push. And, any opportunity I get to get out there and experience that, I definitely take it with both hands.
Yeah, great. And I think it's what we're seeing. Consumers, customers, travelers are really looking to connect with that part of the story as well, which is a really nice thing to see. And it's something that it's great to promote, but it's also really, it's a huge positive influence that tourism is having on communities around the world. So, look, did you want to, I guess now, being a bit more specific, given the audience we've got. So if anyone wanted to to work with you. So one thing that I think we get a lot of questions about is, so if they wanted to work with Shawn Scott, do you prefer to have like a really structured brief around this is what we want you to shoot? Or do you prefer, like, what do you feel ends up with the best outcome for everyone? You know, do you like having the real creative freedom or a real solid brief?
It probably depends on the location and, you know, what sort of access I have in a location. I'm quite lucky here in Australia. I've got my own vehicle that can, I can live out in the outback for weeks on end and be totally self-sufficient. So the tourism boards here usually, you know, just say, okay, Shawn, we'd like you to travel this area, might be 1,000 kilometers, and give me a few ideas of things I would like to see. And then I just go off and do it. And that allows me to be in the right place at the right time a lot more often. I originally, when I first started doing some of these trips, I did a few for Mills, with Tourism Queensland and a few other areas, and I found myself, they put me up in, you know, really big fancy hotels, and at night time we were doing beautiful big dinners, and then I was going out for cocktails, and it was all great, and it was a beautiful and crazy trip. But I was thinking, you know, there's a lot of expense being thrown in here, and it's tying my hands behind my back from being able to stay out that afternoon for sunset or go out and shoot stars that night. And I just thought it's costing a lot more and not allowing me to create what I wanted to create. So yeah, there's nothing worse than, you know, sitting there seeing a beautiful sunset about to happen and looking at your watch going, oh, I've got to get back to meet someone for dinner at 6 o'clock and I've got to leave this. So having that sort of flexibility is great, but obviously when you're looking at some of the locations that you guys are in, I can't drive around in my truck out there and camp out. So obviously you would need support there, and having the support and having the ideas of places to go, that's important. Having like getting out on some boats and things like that. I've been to Tahiti before, and that worked really well. I think I was pretty much just sort of sent to different locations and then given that freedom to find what I could find while I was there. Sometimes I get given a car. Obviously I do love to have a car as much as I can, because it does allow me to see things that sometimes the people you're working for may not see. And that's one of my skills, is finding things I think's beautiful. And I might drive past somewhere and think, wow, that'll look great in another couple of hours when the sun goes this angle, and I'll turn around and come back. And quite often my clients will be sitting there going, wow, I never really thought of that place, but that looks awesome. So having a bit of both. Yeah. And once again, it obviously depends on the location, but getting out on boats and things like that, something you can't do on your own, and having that access is awesome. I think in the Cook Islands, I remember I did a trip there once, and that was incredible. And they had me out on an island off Aitutaki called One Foot Island, and it's a place that a lot of tour boats come to at lunchtime, and they set up on the nice picnic and then they all leave. But they had this old wooden shack there, which they said I could spend the night on, and it was a long way away from everywhere. Had no phone service, had no power. They gave me, I think, 2 bottles of red wine and a packet of chips for dinner. I had nothing to cook on. So I remember just walking around this island shooting stars at night, and it was incredible. And then woke up in the morning, jumped straight in the water, and did these photos. And yeah, it's probably some of the best photos I got of the whole trip, and just being put in spots and places like that was really key.
If anyone wants to work with Shawn, just dump him off at a private island and leave him with a bag of chips.
That's it. That was quite an interesting night. It was bizarre because there was absolutely no phones, no reception, no lights, no power. But it's something I will never forget. And being on such a beautiful location, it was incredible.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to that. You know, for many people in the Pacific Islands, that's probably normal for them. But you know, that's something that, well, you can hear the excitement in mine and Shawn's voices. You hear that and you think, oh, gee, that's what I want to do. And, you know, it resonates. People want that sort of experience. So it's just worth noting. So I just wanted to now, that's sort of all of my questions. And I wanted to make sure there's enough time for everyone in the webinar to ask either myself any questions or Shawn some questions. I'll leave my email on the last slide. So I definitely encourage anyone in the webinar, if anyone wants just any advice, more than happy if anyone wants to just send me an email. And if you're looking at working with a storyteller like Shawn, or or even a micro influencer, something in that space, or you're looking at doing some content marketing, more than happy to provide any advice for anyone in the webinar. So I'll leave that on the last screen, but yeah, I'll open it up to some audience questions, I think.
Thank you, Paul and Shawn. That was really insightful. And no one has sent any questions yet, so maybe I'll open the floor and if they want to ask any questions. But Paul, Shawn, I just got one question for you. It's good to hear that you are interested to work in the Pacific, and I'm guessing I'll get a lot of questions from our NTOs and industry members how to reach out to you. So what's the best way to reach out to you, Paul? Shawn, sorry, if someone would want to to work with you.
You can probably go through Paul's email there. Paul helps look after a few things I've got. He could point you in the right direction towards me. Yeah, and I suppose the other thing, like Paul mentioned, I would be feeling really excited if I was you guys, because once Australians can travel and you're happy to welcome Australians, they're going to be ready to go. It's just from that trip I've just done, I just got blown away about how busy it was in the northern part of Queensland, because all our southerners that got out of the States before they got locked down, they were all up here and they all pushed north for the winter, so they love this time of the year heading north. So I think there's a lot of people ready to go. So once the green light is there and they know your locations are safe and very attractive place to go, they'll be trying to come there. And any content and anything that you can provide that spurs that on, I think it's just that last little part that you guys will need.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawn. So I'm just going to open the floor for anyone. If you have any questions for Shawn or Paul, please, yeah, go ahead. Does anyone have any questions? No one is asking anything yet.
I just wanted to second that. There's another, I didn't probably touch on it but I'm hearing, I think every single person I speak to in Australia, whether it's friends, our customers, any research we've done, people have all cancelled their European and Bali holidays, and it's difficult to get any statistics on it, but everybody is looking at either, if we're in Melbourne, they're either looking to bar northern Queensland or Western Australia, but equally Pacific Islands. Everyone's asking me, what country should we be looking at instead of Bali? So I think it's just second to what Shawn said, I think it's going to be a really exciting time in our region for travel.
Paul, I think just a question for you from my end. How do you work? I mean, so for example, if an NTO is interested to do storytelling in the area, so how do you go about? What's the process? I mean, what's your preference? How?
Yep. Yeah. So I guess there's two. So Shawn is obviously, if you're looking at Shawn does obviously the content and the community side of things. So what we do is work with Shawn. If a NTO wanted to work on, we create a bookable trip around Shawn's experience, essentially. So it's almost just an added, so if you were to get Shawn to go to, well, Shawn mentioned Tonga, so we'll say, if we got Shawn to go to Tonga, and he would photograph his experience of Tonga, as he mentioned, a lot of people then, the next step is they ask Shawn, how do I do this? Where was that photo? I want to go there. So what we do is we work with the tourism boards to build that into a bookable trip when Shawn's going, so that when Shawn's sharing this incredible content of his experience and he's really, and people are like, oh my God, I want to go there, they're able to just book his holiday, and we make sure. So we work with all local operators. So responsible tourism is something that we're really proud to build into our brand. So we work with all the local operators directly, and we build an experience that people can book around Shawn's experience in the destination.
Fantastic. Shawn, I got also a quick question, because you said you worked in Tonga. So Paul, you worked with Shawn with that Tonga trip, or was it just? No.
We haven't done. We were just speaking to Chris from SPTO when COVID hit. So
okay,
we were looking at like starting that, and then
Yeah.
obviously restrictions are not allowing that at the moment. So
Okay.
not yet, but very soon, yes, we will.
Okay. Because I thought Shawn, you mentioned you've been to Tonga, did some work there.
Yeah, I worked just purely with the tourism board in Tonga.
Okay.
4 or 5 years ago. Just
Okay.
photographing the whales. Like I've done that in Switzerland, all over the world. I've worked with tourism boards directly. Me and Paul have been working for the last year or two on this concept, and like Paul's mentioned, we haven't been able to push anything out yet because of the fact that no one can leave yet.
Awesome. Fantastic. No, just to get as much information as possible and for our viewers as well. So it's really good to know that you've worked in Tonga. So I think I think the whale watching is one of the famous products in Tonga. I think they're famous for their whale watching. So it's interesting, really interesting to know. Not getting any more questions. Just to the other attendees, if you have any questions before we wrap it up. If there's no questions, we will wrap it up. But there's some positive comments coming through. So really, there's one. I just want to just to let you guys know. Can't wait to welcome the Aussies again. Thank you very much. Very informative. That's from Donna Watson. Thank you, Donna. And interesting discussion. Thank you so much, Paul and Shawn. So thank you so much. Also, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you guys again, Paul and Shawn. Thank you so much. I didn't realize how big you were, Shawn, because like you mentioned, I'm not a photographer. So I did research you last night. So thank you very much for joining us. And Paul, hopefully we can work in the future with SPTO, like we mentioned before in previous meetings and everything. And hopefully we can get Shawn on board as well through you and other storytellers as well. So very excited. And I think everyone is excited for the borders to happen and for the Aussies to come to the Pacific as well. And thank you for the stats. I think it's informative and insightful as well. Yeah, thank you so much.
And just big thank you from I think we've all gone through the mental sort of struggles this year, but I think, and Shawn just second that, I think it's an exciting time for our region. I think we're going to see some really exciting travel happening in the next 12, 24 months. So yeah, look, I'm really excited about our region in particular, and we're excited to get working again. So.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And thank you for everyone joining in. I know some of you are joining in from different time zones as well. So thank you. Thank you again. And I hope you all have a very safe and fantastic day and fantastic week. And we'll see you on next webinar in 2 weeks' time. So thank you very much. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.